Next, we will have our superintendent's report, so I'll call on Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Chairperson Hammond, and our school board, our administrators, to our community. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about getting back to school. This is an exciting time. Our teachers return tomorrow. Teachers and staff will return to school tomorrow, and we're just really excited. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about what we're returning to. Just last week, I had an opportunity to sit with our school leaders. They're here during the summer in preparation for 17,000 youth and teens and all the way up to our adult ed students to get ready to return on August the 18th. And we talked about, with all of the change and all of the things that are going on in our community, what are we returning to? And so that's what I would like to report to this board today. And so we said we're turning, and I'm not going to read all of these, but a children's first mindset. We're returning to a notion of a common goal with high expectations and collaboration. We talked about this whole child focus, as you said with the Aristotle quote, being data-driven and with equity as our focus on allocation. We talked about safety and security. We talked about all the stakeholders working to create a sense of belonging. We talked about a common belief, whether that's social and academic growth. We talked about a united community. As we think about our students returning on the 18th, I like to lead in with that, a united community. And so this is what our school leaders say. This is what they're preparing for. This is what our teachers and staff, when they return, all 2,600 of us strong tomorrow, will be preparing for. And so, in part of that notion of safety and security, we wanted to create a system that would allow us as a community to have common language about what does it mean to be safe? What does it mean to return to a safe and secure environment? To that end, we know that the spread of COVID-19 has stressed, has provided anxiety to our entire community, and we wanted to have the language to deal with this. Last year, to nobody's fault, we had open and closed. When I was a school principal, I took solace in having a manual. This was something, when a storm came, I could go to the manual, and that manual would tell me, here are the steps that you follow to keep your school building safe. We did not have that manual for a pandemic. While this document is not perfect, it provides us a guideline. It provides us steps to allow our school leaders to help layer on the mitigations to provide a safe and nurturing environment for all of our students and staff. As you see here, members of the board, I think everything in District 5 has to have 5 something. So we have 5 levels of mitigation, from level 1, which is open with no mitigations. This is what we considered school pre-pandemic. And as community transmission increases, we go from green to yellow to orange. In each of these phases, and I want to thank the help of our school leaders, led by Nurse Stanek, who did an amazing job filling in this guidance to provide us different layers of mitigations to inform our community, to inform our staff, to inform our school leaders, and to this board where each of our schools are along this continuum. No longer is it open or closed. It's, are we at green? Are we at yellow? We're at orange. Before we go to any of the levels, we have a matrix that the community can follow. In this matrix, we outline what causes a school to move from one color or the other. You will see that this matrix has 2 areas that we are comparing. County risk level, as defined by DHEC, which is the spread within our communities, and the COVID information that comes from our dashboard on positive cases within a particular school. as we look at the community spread, as we look at the number of positive cases, we can then respond to determine what level that school is going to be at. The school will have its indication on Monday, and it will stay that level for the week. While the dashboard will give updates to where students are throughout, or where that school is, you'll be able to follow as parents just where we fall on this dashboard to know where we're going to be on the next week. What does this do? It reduces some of the anxiety. You know how to plan. You know how to help. And then you know the expectations from the school leaders. Dr. Harris and his team are working hard to update our dashboard to reflect the color system. But we will open up with the old dashboard until we get this new one underway. However, we will communicate on week 1 exactly the color levels. If we were to open up today, based on the county spread level, we would be at an orange. However, we have those mitigations outlined and those processes outlined on our website. And while we know this document is not perfect, we know that you all can help us, the community can help us. We'll have a community forum where you can review this and give us input to make this document fit all of our needs. We use the guidance outlined by the South Carolina DHEC as that's our benchmark for how we layer on these levels of mitigation. And so all of that will be outlined as well within the website. But we submit this as a way to have common language across all of our schools, from Piney Woods to Seven Oaks, to communicate just how we as a community are dealing with the effects of COVID-19 as we welcome our children and our staff back to school. By definition, you cannot be a community without something in common, and this provides us that common language. As you notice, level 5 is red, which is the distance learning, where the buildings are closed. We will move to that with if either A, the governor closes the schools, or the superintendent, under consultation with our medical staff and our administration and our school board, see that there's a need. But we feel that we can work our schools from orange to yellow, from yellow to green, but we can make sure that the adults stay in that conversation, because this outlines everything adults can do. We're excited about accepting students however they come. There is no judgment, just like we wouldn't judge any student on any characteristic. So whether you have a mask or no mask, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, we're ready for your children to return to school. And we have the precautions in place. Work with us to make this document and these mitigations better and better for our children. It's the children that we concern ourselves with. And so when we stand for questions at the end of this presentation, just consider that. How are our children? And so with that, we want to continue the presentation about our safety concerns. And I want to ask Dr. Harris to come to the podium just now and talk about other things that we're doing as we receive our students on August the 18th. Dr. Harris.
Thank you. Good evening. I've been asked to render comments and statements regarding safety concerns across the district. And certainly before I do that, I want to introduce to you who will assist me. It's Kelly Brown, our Student Services Officer. She will come forward in just a few moments to kind of help us with part of this presentation. So the question has been asked, or it certainly has been raised, how are the children? And before we get into and at least initial responses to that, I wanted to offer, by way of a review of the July 12th board motion that indicates, you can help me with that board motion, that indicates that the administration has been directed, in essence, to reduce safety concerns such as bullying in order to improve the classroom management and the socio-emotional health of all students in Lexington and Richland 5. Oh, perfect. Thank you. In Lexington and Richland 5. So having said that, I wanted to just kind of offer you a few highlights as to what has happened here recently, most recently, as well as things to anticipate in the very near future. One of the first highlights is that on August 4th, as well as concluding on today, August 9th, there were discipline workshops for our school and administrators and principals. I'll share with you that we're happy to report that all of our schools are very well represented and engaged in a very several hours, if you will, quite frankly, several hours of conversations and discussions related to discipline. And all of these were based on really a threefold approach: school law, District 5 policy, and the Code of Conduct. Now, I wanted to highlight with you just a couple of those topics so that you have an idea and the public would have an idea as to some of the things that were talked about in this very power-packed conversation and workshop that was held. A review of the Student Code of Conduct Handbook in terms of disciplinary procedures across all levels, in that we have face-to-face instruction. We also have the virtual 5. So there was virtual discipline conversations and insight. School attendance was also addressed, as well as parent communications, custody-related matters, as well as the state's threat assessment that has certainly been mandated by our state of South Carolina. Threat assessment teams have been developed as well. Working with law enforcement and legal counsel. We were certainly happy to have our representatives from our student safety team to be a part of those conversations to assist us in how we work with law enforcement. And then there were also conversations and insight about monthly think tank trainings. These are not new, but we certainly are engaged to go in deeper levels in terms with our administrators and district office staff. And we've already developed the very first one where our State Department representative will be here to talk specifically about bullying, intimidation, and harassment, what it is and what it is not, and how we can best define that here in School District 5. But I want to pause now because our next option, we have Ms. Brown who will come forward, and she wants to share with us some insight related to Stop It, which is an anonymous reporting system that we've implemented here in School District 5.
Stop It is powerful in serving both as a deterrent and facilitating the upstander effect. The Stop It platform provides schools with powerful tools to report and manage conflict, harassment, bullying, cyberbullying, and any type of harmful and inappropriate behavior. Students are equipped with a mobile app for fast, secure, and anonymous reporting. Stop It Messenger gives you the power to follow up with the anonymous submitter of an incident and conduct a real-time, two-way anonymous conversation, so you can get more information and ask questions, facilitating an effective and efficient investigation. Get ahead of incidents and mitigate risk. Stop It's incident management and reporting system. You decide who will receive and manage real-time reports from students. Time and date-stamped records ensure easy compliance reporting and legal protection. Utilize customizable incident attributes in order to build valuable and trackable data for your institution. Built-in reporting tools highlight problem areas, track your progress, and identify trends. And proactively address issues with our alert engine, which automatically alerts you to repeat offenders, behaviors, or other issues. Send notifications directly to students via the Stop It app, such as safety alerts, advisories, or policy reminders. Let Stop It help save you time and mitigate risk with our simple, fast, and powerful solution.
So good evening. That is just a short video that describes Stop It that we have implemented in our secondary schools. And to summarize, Stop It is a smartphone and desktop app that allows students to make anonymous reports. Now, students also have the option to identify themselves on the app if they choose to, or they can report anonymously. But the platform allows students and encourages students and empowers students to speak up about behaviors that are concerning to them if they see something with bullying or intimidation or threats or mental health concerns or other forms of misconduct. This app also allows students to make reports if they need assistance or guidance with the situation that they are dealing with. One key piece to Stop It Solutions is that it is 24/7 monitored by the company Stop It Solutions. So if a concern or a report that is made by a student is stating that the student wants to harm self or others, because Stop It Solution is monitored 24/7, that will alert Stop It to escalate the concern or escalate the report and send it to another layer of support in our district. So when a student makes a report, it immediately pushes out to the administrator's device, whether that's a laptop and or their cell phone. So it's instant response for the administrator. If a student makes that report where they would have a concern of reporting harm to self or others, then it would be escalated to where it would call me. If I did not answer, it would call Dr. Harris. If he did not answer, then it would call local law enforcement to share this concern with our local agencies in that partnership. To give you an example of the effectiveness of Stop It, I was heading to a meeting, and it was on the same road as the school that I received a call on. So I'm driving to the meeting, to the school in which I received a call from Stop It Solutions. And the Stop It Solutions made me aware of a report that a student just made where a comment was she was mentioning harm to self. So I hung up and I called the school building principal as I'm en route to that school, and she said, I already know about it, we're on top of it, because it alerted to her device as well. I was 3 or 4 minutes from the school. So when I got in the building, the SRO, the school counselor, and the school building principal were already working with that student. So it's a testament to when a student courageously speaks up, that the intervention and support and affirmation of a student reaching out and asking for help is within minutes. So from the time of November 2019, we launched the Stop It app to secondary schools. So secondary schools have been working with this app as a resource that is available for them. In February 2020, we were preparing for implementation into the elementary schools. But due to the COVID pandemic, we paused that to address the priority of the needs of our students during the COVID process. So now for this school year, we are planning to implement the Stop It for our elementary schools. And the purpose for implementation into the elementary schools is we want our students to know that it's available, that they're aware. Part of the elementary process is preparing students for today and tomorrow. So if our students are transitioning to our intermediate, middle, and high schools, we want them to know that this is not only do we want them going to a safe adult, we want them to know that there are additional resources out there and available to them. So we will work with our school counselors and a school administration at the elementary level to walk naturally through this with them. When we do school lessons and guidance with our counselors on lessons on bullying, personal safety, internet safety, this will be a natural conversation that we will intertwine in with our students. We are excited to say that in District 5, for all of our students, this is another avenue, this is another resource, and another way for them to share their concerns and partner together to keep our schools safe. So regardless if they are in Irmo, Chapin, Dutch Fork, switching to a different school, grade level, neighborhood, magnet program, one consistent piece throughout this process for our students is that they can utilize the Stop It app. Dr. Harris?
So over and beyond what school administrators have received and the Stop It, we have also organized a team of a social-emotional wellness team, as we often call it, comprised of school social workers, psychologists, behavior interventionists, have come together and presented me with topics and workshop opportunities for our families and our general community. And these will be held throughout the geographical areas of the district. and we'll certainly make use of our community partners as special guests and presenters for that. So topics such as bullying, obviously, trauma, anxiety, substance use and abuse, things of that nature. But lastly, I'd like to report to you also that at the start of school, we have what's called a start of school crisis intervention, is what we've termed it. And the purpose of this is really to assist our students and our staff with their transitions back into school. This will be done during the first days of school. And if you're at all familiar with our grief protocol that we have in the district, it is a framework from the grief protocol. Example is that a situation occurs at our schools with a staff or staff member, then our team of professionals will come to that school and they will spend time throughout the day and the days ahead addressing and being available for those students and staff as they are addressing grief matters that may have occurred. Using that framework, we're going to have as a crisis intervention, the start of school, that same setup in all of our schools. I received a report today, an update rather, that indicates that all of our schools will be represented with counselors and available support staff to assist students and their staff with their transitions back into school. We recognize that anxiety is a high, that perhaps fear persists as well. So we want to be able to address those students returning back to the classroom. If there is a student who chooses not to talk directly one-on-one with someone, then I will also report to the community that we are compliant with the most recent Student ID Card Suicide Prevention Act that is for grades 7 through 12. That is legislation that has been signed into play by the governor's office, and you will find that about the IDs of all of our students grades 7 through 12. So that too is available, and we're certainly happy to report that as yet another layer of intervention. So in conclusion, as we travel throughout South Carolina and we across the district and we're prompted with the question, how are the children? Our aim as school staff and school administrators and district office staff is to communicate that we're diligently working toward affirming that all of the children are well. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Harris, and thank you, Director Brown, for a great presentation of letting us know when our students come to school just what steps we have in place. And we believe that this is an ongoing process. We do a lot of hard work in our planning, but the power is in the pivot. And for me, we need the community to help us to pivot. We're not saying we have the perfect answers, but we're providing opportunities for you to help us get to that perfect, to get better. So we're going to create opportunities for those in the community to help us. You will find that we have our multiple ways for our community to get involved. We have a public input survey that is currently out now that will help us with understanding what we would do with our return to school and to our ESSER 3 allotments. We'll come back and report to this board on the 23rd on what the community has informed us, along with our administration, to present to this board, this body, our full plan. But we're taking this opportunity to let the community know that that's available. Also, we have a community virtual forum. This will be scheduled for August the 12th. It'll be evening from 6 p.m. to 7:30. And you'll have an opportunity, again, as a community member, as we go over the results of this forum, of the survey, to get feedback, to have some questions, to question the superintendent. We will have representatives from DHEC there to provide us with information, the latest information regarding COVID-19 and safe operations of schools. And I want to thank our communications team and our technology team for setting this up for us so that we can take in the public's comments. To keep this as efficient as possible, we're going to ask that questions are typed into the virtual chat, and then our facilitator will ask those questions so that we can get as many questions answered or addressed in that hour and a half. Also, we know that because the power is in the pivot, that we need those of you in our community to help us continually throughout the year. And so we have multiple advisories that we set up. These advisories are designed to go through a system of problem, cause, solution. It's easy to find the problem. Help us find the cause. And then moreover, help us with a solution. And these particular, whether it's business, faculty, ministers, parent, realtors, senior citizens, student advisory, support employee, emergency responders, we will put out information on who your contact is at the local level. And this is a person that you can reach out to. As we have these advisory meetings, this is the opportunity for us to find solutions, the powers and the pivot. And so if we can use us in the community, you can always come to a board meeting, but this is operations will allow us to change our practices to best serve the community's needs. One group that's not listed here that I would like to shout out, for the lack of a better term, is the Teacher Forum. The Teacher Forum has been very instrumental in gathering the voice of the teacher. And I want to continue to highlight, they've done an amazing job throughout the years, but to continue to highlight to our teachers watching that their voice can be heard through the Teacher Forum as well as the faculty advisory. And so these are opportunities for us to engage our community. We cannot be a community without having something in common. These advisories allow us a common opportunity to share our voice as we impact change. And last, I would like to, as Dr. Harris reminded us, that we are always going to ask that question, and how are the children? But speaking of the teacher forum, one of the things they asked me, I said, well, Dr. Ross, how are the teachers and staff? You're asking about we are going to be the ones they see when they come to school. And how are we? And I can tell you that our community has faced a lot under the last 18 months. The collective trauma, the collective stress, it does hit our teachers. When we think about what trauma does, you cannot learn under stress. And so we have to de-stress if we're going to learn. That is our business. But it just seems like society is building it up. So I want to identify for this board and our community research from the Center of Human Stress. They cite 4 areas that build stress. Again, you cannot learn under stress, and so we must identify where it comes from. You must name it in order to tame it. And the first one is situations of novelty, where there's new information being presented to you that you were not prepared for. The second one is situations of unpredictability, where you do not know what's going to happen next. Situations of threat that may come to you, or the sense of a threat, whether it be a physical or emotional threat. And the last is situations where you sense you have no control. Well, if you look at the first one of novelty, of unpredictability, of threats, of situations where you have control, you'll realize over the last 18 months we have experienced all of them, layered and layered multiple times over. Psychologists say that in a situation of trauma, it takes an adult almost 2 weeks to return cortisol levels down to normal states after being having a situation of trauma. And a student or a child with that same incident, it takes almost twice as long. We must name it to claim it, to tame it. And so if you looked at our presentation today, while we can't change the novelty of what happens tomorrow, that's life, there are some things that we do have control over. For unpredictability, for parents, we've provided you a matrix and a framework that lets you know how we're going to operate our schools as the cases increase, as community spread increases and decreases. You can predict how schools will operate. Under situations of threat, you heard Director Brown and Dr. Harris outline how on the first weeks of school, there will be trauma specialists, there will be response teams there, that when your child hits the school, however they come, that there's someone there that can deal with that heightened level of stress that they may carry. And under situations where you sense that there is no control, I'll remind you of something my grandmother told me. She says there are only two forces in the world. The forces of creation, they come from the Creator. The forces of destruction, they come from the destroyer. She said, where your heart is determines what moves you. Are those forces of destruction that tear down, that accuse, that ridicule, that hurt, that have pain, that destroy? Or are you moved by forces of creation that heal, that bring together, that work together, that unite, that love? What can we control? We can control what force moves our heart. As a community, to be a community, we must have something in common. I would ask that it be the force of creation, for only the Creator can do that. And that will let us know what is moving us. It is that force, Madam Chair and members of this board, that I'm going to ask our 2,600 employees on August the 13th at 9:30 to tell you that this is what we're trying to create. It is not Dr. Ross's vision, for I'm not worthy enough to hold such an awesome responsibility. It's going to be the 2,600 employees who are answering the question, why do I work in District 5? We will speak with one voice, our message, and we would hope that all of us, for all 17,000 students, work in the force of creation from the Creator to make that why our reality. Madam Chair, members of the board, that concludes the superintendent's report, and we stand for any questions.
On that was great. I want you to, I think you and I talked a little bit, and you were working with Ms. Rawls about, when we talked about how the teachers, if there's a little Cersei maybe that's somewhere for teachers.
Yeah, when you yielding the floor to me, Madam
I'm
Chair?
going to give the floor to Dr.
When we talk about how are the children, we first of all have to talk about how are the teachers and the staff, because they're the ones that are teaching our children. They're the ones that we have given the power to impart knowledge to them. So in that light, it's just as one little thing that we could do. I move that District 5 provides an additional allocation of $100 to each eligible employee who is employed by the district as of November the 30th of the current fiscal year to offset expenses incurred for supplies directly related to education of students. The total allocation for each eligible employee will then be $375.
Yeah. I realize that Marty Rawls has to weigh in on after we get a second, but I didn't want you to have a heart attack or anything on there. Ms. Huddle, second. All right.
Point of privilege.
Yes.
And I also want to thank Marty Rawls and Tina McCaskill for working really hard, thinking about the supplies of those teachers. Back to school shopping is upon us, but they really took this with an instructional and a financial lens to see what we could do to make sure that each teacher was prepared. So I just wanted to take that time to give that recognition.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Any other comments or questions? We have a vote. All those in favor? And
Don't forget about Nikki.
oh, Nikki, please forgive me. Nikki, I want to say this for Nikki, and Nikki, is that a yes vote before I say that? Thank you, shaking head, all right. So it is actually 6 and 0 no's. But I just want to apologize to Nikki and tell the public that Nikki is here. She has been here, but she is on family vacation, and also we want to send condolences. We hope your mother's out of the hospital and well soon. And we're thinking about you. Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions I wanted to ask Dr. Ross. Yes, sir. Okay. One of the things pertaining to 8B, COVID-19 operations and guidance, I think I remember you saying one time that there was a dampening effect with the color coding. And I think what I'm referring to is that the way you put it was that, you know, we have very large counties, so we might be weighed down from somebody from Eastover or somebody, or in Lexington County, somebody from Swansea. And I wanted to know, when we look at these color-coded charts, how do we adjust, or do we adjust for local variance in our district versus all the way across a large population area?
So I'm scanning the room for Nurse Stanek if I miss anything, but I'll start the answer. Right now, while DHEC does report or does have the zip code data, when I go to the website, I can't get access to it, so I don't know if it's live yet. So the best data we have at the time is the county spread. But you're right. We're in 2 counties, so we're talking from Gilbert to Hopkins. All of that is included in our data. And that's part of the pivoting that we could do. Right now, we're operating with the best data that we have at the time. Once those links become live, that will give us a little bit more data to understand what our community spread is. I would also just kind of warn from what we're seeing in other districts that opened before us, that because community spread is so high, be prepared for high case numbers on the first day of school. Just kind of don't be alarmed by that. When they come in, we already have, according to the staff, and cases where principals and school leaders are getting reports that children will not be present due to positive case rates. So I want to make sure I answer your question. While right now we're at county level, when more local data is available from DHEC, we can move our matrix to that.
Okay, and I have a second question for you. As everybody knows, my wife and I believe in engendering a spirit of volunteerism. We think that means more to the community than most things. And I noticed on a prior organizational chart that you submitted to us, okay, this is not a trick question.
You need a cheat sheet.
that the District 5 Foundation that you submitted was shown as a lateral portion directly correlated to the interim superintendent, and it's shown as a solid line. And although the District 5 Foundation is not part of this organization or the school district, it is a vital function, and I wanted you to please explain to the public, you know, how you view District 5 Foundation's role compared to the way it has been.
Well, I think they have to be an integral partner with us, and so copying a different model was my fault, and I take 100% responsibility for if I miscommunicated that. They are not under my direction, so I would prefer and amend that to a dotted line, but they have to be a part of the equation. They have to be a part of the discussion. We have to work hand in hand as a district and a foundation. They do such an amazing job as principal. I saw firsthand when they funded those grants for those students. That's innovation on the ground. I want to, with their working with them and working with their leadership, to look at how do we do that for teachers, teacher innovation grants, so that we can have action research by the teachers on the ground. There is no better way to innovate than to put that ability in the hands of a teacher. And so same, $2,000 grant to look at innovating to meet the needs of subgroups that we have not been able to have success with. I think that's such an integral part. So they'll stay on my org chart. It may be a dotted line, a thought bubble or something, but they'll be a part of what we do as long as I'm here.
Ms. Hines?
Okay, I have a couple questions too. I have one question regarding the COVID operations guidance. First of all, I want to thank you for reaffirming that students are going to come as they are, whether they're wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, or whether they're vaccinated or not vaccinated. I appreciate that. I know we have a lot of concern in the community about that, so I appreciate you reaffirming that. I do have a question about how it looks for the first week or two of school, as we don't have data specifically related to individual schools and District 5. I know that you mentioned that if we were to go back right now, currently we're at an orange level 4, which is high mitigation. And as I look at that operation guidance, we're one step away from red, which is not opening, which is concerning. And then there's, in the orange section, it says, or in the orange category, it talks about considering abbreviated school days or weekly schedules. And so as everyone is preparing for the next week to start school back next week, what is that really? Like, when are we going to hear about what an abbreviated schedule looks like, when it will be applicable for that first or second week when we don't have all of that data? How will that impact bus routes or parents that are doing drop-off? What does that look like?
Awesome question. You know, right now we're not at a abbreviated schedule, and that's a great question and clarification. The reason we have that, when we were talking about this matrix, we really thought we were going to be in green. I mean, we never even thought orange was a possibility. It was just a way to let our community know that we have more mitigations other than open and close. I think we're closer to moving to yellow than we are to moving to red. Okay. This is precautionary so that we can go up to our highest level. I believe that starting school under this level of mitigation allows us to get school going. And I know, I'm a parent. I drop my children off at 2 of our schools, and I want to go in and I want to be there on that first day. But I want to give the staff that opportunity to do what Dr. Harris has put in place, to have those opportunities to meet the students, to settle the students, and to actually get a count of where we are in terms of positivity numbers. And then you'll see mitigations kind of drop down. While there's a lot of discussion that goes in before we delay opening any school, but all of this is to stop from going from closing the buildings. Okay. So that's an amazing point to bring up, that we all intended when we were planning this to talk about how we're going to open up in green today, but I think it's good for us to just, under abundance of caution, open up in orange, move to yellow, move back to green.
Okay, and then kind of going on that, are we going to have individual levels at each school, or is this district-wide?
I think it's best to let this be school data, and here's why. We have a huge span from Seven Oaks to Piney Woods. Mm-hmm. If you move the entire district down on a particular area, I think you can dampen what happens in an area where that's not the case. And you may disrupt a community that really doesn't need any disruption. The second point is, this is almost, this is good data. So if we see that one school is at orange and another's at green, we want to know what are they doing at this school that we can spread across the system. So it is, it's going to be dependent on 24 sites individually.
Okay. And then I have a question about the Stop It, if that's okay. Okay. Sorry. All right. So Stop It was implemented in District 5 in 2009 in the secondary schools. Is that correct?
Yeah, in 2019.
2019. Okay, so do we have data on how many students utilized that app and how many responses that we had compared to complaints that may have been made outside of the app? Do we have any of that data? You may not have that now. if we have it, I would like to see it at some point, if. that's
Sure,
okay.
I can tell you off the top of
Okay.
my head, we had 590 reports of, just last year, of secondary students utilizing the Stop It app.
Okay.
So
Okay,
when they have access to it, they are using that as a resource.
and they're using that on their cell phones?
They can use it on the device, and we've also partnered with our technology department to make sure that we push it across our Chromebook devices. So it's on all of our student devices that they can access the app.
So when we are talking about rolling it out to the elementary schools, we're talking about having elementary school students report bullying on their Chrome device or on their cell phones?
We are working with technology department and going to coordinate how we want that to look. We want to keep in mind that we're talking about kindergarten, first grade, second grade, but how that is going to look for our early learners is going to look different for our fourth and fifth grade students, because our fourth and fifth grade students are moving to an intermediate, middle, high school environment sooner than our other students. So the awareness is the key piece for our Stop It application in the elementary schools, and in those upper grade levels, we want students to have practice utilizing that app so they're prepared for those intermediate grades.
So we're making elementary school students aware that when they're moving up, that they can utilize this
Correct, and
avenue.
as
They're not actually using it in elementary school.
they will have access to it, and we are working with our school counseling
Okay.
department to map that out for a smooth implementation for all of our grade levels. What's that going to look like? What is that going to sound like? And how are we going to utilize that at each of our grade levels so that our students and our teachers are comfortable with that implementation?
Okay, okay.
That good, Ms. Hines?
It
Got
is.
Okay. Ms. Huddle?
I just have one question. You mentioned the advisory committees, and I was curious, one feedback we've had from people in the past is they wanted to be on a committee and didn't know how to get on a committee or how people are chosen. So are these volunteer committees, and is there a way that members of the community can request to be on a committee?
I'm going to ask I don't know if you're prepared to answer this, Ms. McElveen, exactly how people can get on these advisories. So I was just taking them as they are, but I think giving us some time to figure out exactly if a new person wants to get on there, I'll yield to Ms. McElveen on that.
Yes, if somebody wants to be a part, they can just reach out to us and express that they would like to be on a committee, and of course, we will work to make that accommodation happen if possible. We can do that.
So should they email you, Dr. Ross, or Ms. McElveen?
I think if you email me or one of you all, and then you forward it to me, and then I'll work with Office of Communications to make sure that we have, I think the notion is not to have open representation from one school, so we want to make sure that there's balance in that so that we can capture the entire school system.
Thank you. I had a question, Ms. Brown, with the Stop It also, if I could ask you. You gave us like the example, and this is for that we've had in the, I guess, middle and high school have it, right? Yes, ma'am. And you gave the example of like where somebody was going to harm themselves and you were able to get right on it. Do you have an example of, say, the bullying and how that gets handled? Because, you know, bullying can happen in the cafeteria. It might happen not in a classroom or in the hallway. And I just wondered how effective it's been for kids and used for the bullying part.
Sure. So when a student makes a report, they can make a statement. There's a series of questions that the student has to answer in order to submit. So they can start with the initial question of, tell me about the concern. Where is this located is the next question. When did this occur is the next question. Do you want to identify yourself is the next question. So the student paints the picture of the situation for the student. For the administrator, they submit it, and if the administrator has additional questions, there is a messaging component that can be utilized through Stop It, where the administrator can say, thank you for making that report. Can you tell me a little bit more information about this? If the student identified themselves, then oftentimes you can see in the messaging component that administrators will say, come to my office directly so we can handle it and address it immediately.
Good.
Most of the time, though, while it's an anonymous reporting app, our students are identifying themselves because they want to address the situation of concern for them.
Good. Yeah, I was just interested, like, how that worked. And Dr. Ross, could I ask a question, just for a lot of parents, in 5, you know, because this is, well, we had it with COVID last year, but this is a voluntary thing, because there's still a lot of kids and parents that would prefer the virtual. Is that by semester, or is that decided, or is it, you know, all year?
Ms. McCaskill, do you know the answer?
With 5, I had a few questions sent to me about, you know, opting in and out, and I know you had to make your plan, so I'm assuming you're there for a certain amount of time.
Right. At any point, the students can go back to their home school. Coming into 5, we'll reevaluate that at the semester. Right now, we do currently have a waiting list, and we're looking at those to see if, in fact, we can allow those in before school starts. But once school starts,
Right.
we need to wait until the semester to readmit anyone if there's space.
Thank you, because I can tell you that sometimes the going back and forth was really not good for kids or for teachers. So I'm glad to hear that. Well, you certainly can ask it.
Dr. Ross, you flashed those opportunities on those committees up there real fast, but I know that a while back I served on the industry council here at the center. Was that one of those, was that Ms. McElveen?
I am not sure if that one was actually an advisory for the superintendent. I'm not sure if that was.
Okay, it's, that council is very important to the operation of the center with the Perkins funds and so forth. So, I mean, anybody that's in business or small business or big or large business for that matter could fit into that, and it's a very good way to see have inference into how our education system works. And here at the center, it's really a marvel and a privilege to be on that.